Good evening and welcome to the September 12th, 2023 Tehachapi Unified School District Governing Board meeting. Roll call, Mrs. Amaker.
What time?
It's 5:02.
President Kaminsky,
Here.
Vice President Kelly,
Present.
Clerk Wood. Here. Trustee Cooper,
Here.
Trustee DeSorensen is absent. Trustee Napier is absent. Trustee Sweeney is absent. Superintendent Larson Everson,
Present.
and I'm Idalia Amaker.
Thank you, Mrs. Amaker. For the flag salute and moment of silent reflection, we're going to throw one of our new administrators right up there, and that would be Miss Kimberly Lewis, new Vice Principal at Tehachapi High School.
Please stand for the flag salute. Salute. Pledge. Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Item 2, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Kelly, a motion. Second.
It was motioned by Vice President Kelly and seconded by Trustee Cooper that the board approve the agenda as written. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Item 3, general function, superintendent update. Mrs. Larson Everson.
Thank you, Board President Kaminsky. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see everyone this evening. We're going to start off, of course, talking about capturing kids' hearts just a little bit and modeling some strategies. And our very first hooray this evening is to say hooray for our fabulous greeters that we had visiting here. Miss Peyton, Evan, Mathis, and Mackenzie. Let's give them a round of applause. They did a great job modeling important life skills such as confidence, making eye contact. All of these are skills that we hope that all of our students are building as we implement strategies from capturing kids' hearts. So this is something new that we're going to be trying out for each board meeting, is to invite a group of students from each different school monthly to come and serve as greeters for our board meeting. It gives them an opportunity to shine and us a chance to stay connected with students and to see them in action. So thank you once again to Peyton, Evan, Mathis, and Mackenzie. And Miss Amaker has your little treat or thank you for coming to the meeting if you guys want to go up and get that from her. Hooray! Hooray!
What school were they from?
Golden Hills. And they really did do a great job. Okay, let's go on to the next hooray. This one is going to be presented by Dr. Bonnie Porter, our Director of Student Services.
I'm leaking.
Yes.
Okay, our hooray is for our middle school TILA program. We have Enrichment Fridays, and Mrs. White and Mrs. Woods have crafted challenge activities to engage our students and make learning fun. They have, so far our middle schoolers have participated in a cup challenge, a domino challenge, and a fruit roll-up challenge. TILA middle school students are learning and having fun during their Enrichment Fridays. Hooray! Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Porter. Next up is our esteemed principal from Jacobson Middle School, Mr. Lowe.
What I have is on Friday, August 25th, the entire Jacobson Middle School student body came together and listened to separate speeches by students running for ASB. There were 20 students who presented speeches that day. They all did a great job. Some of them were really nervous. You could see their hands shaking, but they did it. And then after school, many of the students went on to our back-to-school dance, sponsored by the 8th grade class. And then the next week, the students voted on their ASB officers for 2023-24. And our new president is Caden Schwartz. Vice president is Kaylee Croisette. Treasurer is Xavier Hernandez, who I think got some votes because he offered to give everybody a cookie if he won, and then he made good on it. He brought 1,000 cookies to school. The secretary is John Coonahan, and activities leader was Dominic Smith. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Up next, Mrs. Bailey, our principal from Golden Hills Elementary.
All right, good evening. Our good thing this month is our Golden Hills team. We continue to have an outstanding teaching team along with fantastic classified employees, and there's a bunch of us all together in our It's Today shirts. And with additional retirements last year, we added 7 new teachers to our teaching team. Not all of these teachers are new to the district. However, they are all new to Golden Hills this year. We also started the year with a new social worker, Michelle Anderson, and she has already been a huge support to both students and staff. So I just want to add that people are the most valuable asset in any organization, and we are grateful to have such wonderful people at our school working together to meet the educational and social emotional needs of our students. So, thank you.
Hooray! Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. And certainly not least, but last with the hoorays this evening is Mrs. Ray from Tompkins Elementary.
So my hooray is just the cutest, right? Those little girls are so cute. So we were in need of some new bikes and trikes for our TKK students. So we presented it to ASB, and they agreed to buy some new bikes as well as some scooters. So when you see them scooting around, I had the pleasure of taking the scooters to them today, and of course I rode them, and that was a big hit, right, with kindergartners. The taxi bike is the talk of the kindergarten playground because they get to take their kids, their friends, on a ride around the playground. My secretary tried it out with my nurse in the office, and it was a big hit. So we're loving the taxi bike. So a hooray for ASB for supporting our TKK students.
Hooray! Thank you, Mrs. Ray. We're going to move on now to a quick sports update for the new 23-24 school year. We're off to a great start so far in our THS athletics. The Lady Warriors volleyball team recording a recent victory against Delano Cesar Chavez in the THS gym earlier this month. And Warrior football team starting the year with an undefeated record. Our football team won an impressive 60-0 victory over Taft to open the month of September, and then had another win on Friday evening, victorious over Wasco with a final score of 25-6. Our girls tennis team is also performing well with our newly established JV team recording a victory over Bakersfield Del Oro varsity team. Our cross-country team is also doing very well with a freshman runner, Helena Casas, taking the gold medal in a recent race over other Kern County freshmen and sophomore competitors. We're also looking forward to seeing the results of our reigning league champion girls golf team, who are going to be competing at various golf clubs against other local high schools. As always, we wish all of our Warrior athletes a very safe and successful season, and I look forward to sharing another update with you next month. Now, on to a little bit more about capturing kids' hearts. I know you got to meet our students from Golden Hills Elementary, But I also wanted to share, as I traditionally do each month, a little bit more about capturing kids' hearts because we are continuing our journey this year. So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about some of the strategies and activities that are intended to support our district goal of building strong relationships, connection with students, and trusting relationships among staff and students. We do this because we know that when students feel safe at school, they feel cared about and connected to school, they experience better educational outcomes. And that's what we're all about, is improving our educational outcomes and ensuring our students have the best experience that we can provide. Because student connectedness is so essential, we are taking very intentional steps to build and maintain meaningful connections and trust with our students. These steps include, and they're listed up there on the slide, greeting students daily at the door, and sometimes that's with a handshake or a high five or a head nod, but we're there to greet them into the classrooms. Inviting them to share good things. We call good things here in the boardroom hoorays, but in the classrooms, they, for the most part, call them good things, and we like for them to start each day, each class period, sharing something good to start the day off on a positive note. We also want to end classes and send students off to the rest of their day with a meaningful launch message that either wraps up what they did for that day or sends students off, ending that class session on a positive note. And finally, building and intentionally using social contracts in the classroom. This is really important because the students become accountable to what they put into place as expectations for their own behaviors, their own level of respect and treatment of each other and the staff that is in that classroom. In addition to these 4 key strategies through Capturing Kids' Hearts, we promote a monthly theme, and this month's theme is empathy. Empathy is the ability to be aware of, understand, and be sensitive to another person's feelings, and we know that this is a very important character trait when kids recognize that how they speak to each other is very important, and it impacts how they feel about each other and how they feel about being at school. Likewise for staff, teachers, administrators alike. We all want to feel welcome and a part of the team, and having empathy for others is a big part of that. So as we continue this year with our implementation of Capturing Kids' Heart, it is important that our staff and administration continue to model CKH strategies, as we do here in the boardroom, so that collectively we are taking intentional actions to engage and empower our students and help them excel at school. Just a quick little update about facilities for you. Over the past few weeks, work has continued, especially with a focus on our athletic facilities. Our track at Coy Burnett Stadium has recently been resurfaced and refreshed with new DG material. The gymnasium floors over at the Tehachapi Education Center are in the process of being replaced. That picture bottom left is where you can see that the floor is coming out. And a new public announcement system was installed at the stadium as well. That's when that photo there on the right is when the lift was over there getting those speakers in place. And although it's not pictured on the slide, there's new playground equipment that has arrived and is waiting for installation over at TILA. So all these things are very exciting and enhancements to our facilities and campuses. And I want to thank Mr. Gilbert and Ms. Patterson from Maintenance and Operation for their continued work with contractors, and also the whole M&O staff and team for their oversight and coordination of these projects. Okay, on to a little enrollment update. This data that you see here is for week 4. Left column is last year's numbers, right column is this year's numbers. You'll see the variation. Some of our sites have gone down in enrollment, others have gone up. When you look at our total enrollment, we're at currently for week 4, 4,262 students, which is 113 students increase over where we were in week 4 for the 22-23 school year. Little update on attendance. Again, top row in blue is 23-24. You'll see the numbers there for each of our different school sites. And for this particular week, week 3, our district average was 93.95%. Year to date, we are at 95.21%, and this is an increase over where we were last year. Last year at week 3, we were at 93.26. So that's about almost a 2% increase, which we're very, very excited about. We know how important attendance is. Kids need to be in school to have the opportunities to grow and mature socially and emotionally, and of course, to help advance their academic skills. So we hope to keep these numbers high as we go on through the school year, and of course, it will be included as my reports continue throughout the school year. Wanted to mention Sippin' with the Soup. Our first session was held for this school year on Tuesday, September 5th. We had a nice, steady flow of participants. I want to say thank you to Board President Kaminsky and Board Clerk Wood for joining me. It's always nice to have company and always nice to talk to different community members and parents who join us to share different thoughts, ideas, suggestions, etc. Our next session will be held at Conan's on October 3rd, 7:30 to 10, and I hope many, many people will come and join me. It's a fun morning. Moving on to the amazing bulletin boards that are here in the room this evening. The bulletin boards were provided this month. The first one with the balloons that represent popcorn was created by Maintenance and Operations, and the second board on the right was created by the Technology Department. And unfortunately, Mr. Gilbert is unable to be here this evening. He's not feeling well, and so I'm going to ask Mr. Intezari to give us the quick update of what is displayed for Maintenance and Operations, and then our Technology Director, Mr. McKay, will update us on technology.
Thank you very much. Some of these projects that are featured on the board might seem familiar because we just talked about them about a month ago. But reading from the maintenance Kirk and Kelly had provided, they wanted to give a shout out and introduce you to the TUSD Maintenance and Operations Department. They have a new site secretary for the department, Mrs. Jackie Fox, who was previously here at the district office, and while a loss for us, a gain for them. And they have a really cohesive team going on. We'd also like to introduce you to the 6 groundskeepers that they have on staff, Mr. Hugo Cardenas, Dean Williams, Ms. Terry Abels, Josh Flanders, Andrew Angulo, and Juan Gomez Herrera. We also have 5 maintenance workers, Mr. John Davis, J.D. Davis, Carlos Lara, Frankie Pointer, and Mr. Mike Sinclair. The theme for the board presentation was now showing our best work, a big production. So obviously you guys are aware that maintenance plays a really integral role. The thing that fascinates me about that department is that no news is good news, right? We know that they're doing their jobs when nothing is happening. And so, but there is a lot of coordination over the summer. They're very proud to feature the work that happened at the Central Kitchen. As you know, the Central Kitchen at the JMS site is where all the food is produced for district-wide. And so they're really proud of the improvements that went on, not just for changing the floor, but also new kitchen equipment that was installed. In their notes, they're bragging a lot about anti-skid floors, and I think to civilians like us, we can't really appreciate that, but it's a lot of work that goes on there, and we just really appreciate them. On the board, you'll see the different projects that were featured at the Central Kitchen, HVAC at JMS, as well as Golden Hills. We also have a lot of pictures featuring the improvements for athletics that were mentioned, the beautiful new tennis courts, and all the improvements going on at the Coy Burnett Stadium. While we all know about the track and the audio system and the painting, there's also new fencing that you might not even notice, but it really enjoyed being a spectator at Coy Burnett Stadium thanks to the maintenance team. So they're very excited to move on to the TEC's Miracle Play structure and fencing improvements, as well as the new gym floor replacement. And encourage anyone to see up close the pictures of the work that they do in the before and afters.
Thank you, Mr. Intezari. Mr. McKay.
Hello, members of the board, superintendent. Our bulletin board topic is about the profound impact and role of technology in our educational landscape. The internet has undeniably transformed the way that we teach and learn. We have access to a myriad of resources and tools which just a few years ago would have seemed unimaginable. While the internet offers significant benefits, it also presents challenges that we cannot overlook. Our policies created by the various departments of the district and the district office and enforced by the technology department are a balancing act, one that weighs the benefits and drawbacks of each new technology and how they both can be used or abused in a school setting. At its core, technology is a tool, and as with any tool, its efficacy and safety lie in how it's used. Our decisions regarding internet access within our schools are carefully considered, always with the aim of ensuring the safety and enrichment of our students. In our commitment to student safety, we adhere to structured guidelines like the Children's Internet Protection Act, commonly known as CITPA. This act ensures that we maintain a standard of care in keeping our students safe online. It's been famously said, we now have more computing power in the palm of our hand than we used to get to the moon in 1969. And with such capability at our fingertips, our role as school leaders in guiding its use becomes all the more significant. The technology department is dedicated to both harnessing the benefits of technology and ensuring the safety of our students. We appreciate the support and the trust that the district has given my department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. And as we shared at the last meeting, there was a lot of summer work that went on with the technology department as well to improve the internet services, technology services throughout the district, and in particular at Jacobson Middle School. So thank you, Mr. McKay. Few upcoming dates and events to remind you of. Tomorrow, Wednesday, is our first early release teacher collaboration day for this school year. And then next week, we have a parent conference week and minimum days for all of our elementary sites and Jacobson Middle School. We have an upcoming Facilities Advisory Committee meeting on Thursday, September 21st. Citizens Task Force meeting on Thursday, September 28th. And then our first group of students to go up to Tehachapi Mountain Park this year, that's coming up for CV third graders on the 2nd and 3rd of October. Of course, I mentioned the Sippin' with the Soup on October 3rd. And Tuesday, October 10th is our next regular board meeting. And November 7th, we have a scheduled board workshop. I think I may have skipped something in there. Friday, October 6th, yeah, THS Homecoming. The homecoming parade will be at 10:45. And then, of course, the football game, the varsity game start time will be 7:30. And I think that wraps it up and concludes my update for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Larson Everson. TAT update. Ms. Bowman?
Good evening, President Kaminsky, members of the school board, Superintendent Larson Everson, and members of the public. My name is Val Bowman, and I am president of the Tehachapi Association of Teachers. As we begin the evening, the association would like to give formal kudos to everyone settling into their daily routines. This applies not only to all levels of staff, but to students as well. We're just days away from the first round of progress reports going home, which is the first milestone for the rest of the year. As we know, we live in a small town, and many of us have lived here for decades, and some for their entire lives. We've seen the progression of children become adults and students become professionals. It's an interesting phenomenon watching the march of age. Little bodies become big bodies and dark hair becomes gray. Initially, we see these people as children or young adults, celebrate their milestones, go to their weddings, hold their babies, relish in their accomplishments, and sometimes we walk them to their graves. Now many former students are professionals. They're teachers, paras, security, custodians, and so on, and they work for TUSD. These adults will often call me Ms. Bowman, and I correct them. I ask they call me by my first name, Val, because we are now on the same playing field. We are adults working in a professional setting, and I no longer hold a power role. We are equals, and while our shared experiences gave us initial bond or baseline, we work daily to build respectful and adult relationships. Sometimes it feels impossible to make the change and go against the respect rules that have been ingrained in us. To this day, I'm still in contact with a few of my former teachers and cannot imagine comfortably calling them Oscar or Patty or Sally. They ask, but I feel weird. I do it, but I almost revert back to childhood, waiting for someone to tell me to mind my manners. Breaking the idea of established power roles is a difficult transition for many adults. At the last board meeting, recorded for all to hear, the line was crossed. A teacher had items taken without permission from the classroom by a board member, who was this person's former teacher, and it was lightly presented as a joke. The overreach of power in not understanding school board roles is not a joke. Board policy is very clear. BP 9005 expects all its members to work together with the superintendent to ensure high-quality education is provided to each student. Each board member shall, and there were many things they shall do, but number 4 stood out, act with dignity and understand the implications of demeanor and respect. Instead of describing the important occurrences at a back-to-school night, this was the inappropriate highlight. School Board Bylaw 9270 says the members will hold themselves to the highest ethical standards, and I did something bad, which is an admission of guilt, goes against the requirement. Not only should this theft never have happened, but the teacher's name should not have been mentioned publicly. Plain and simple, this was an overstep of roles and boundaries. TAT encourages the board member to publicly and privately apologize to the teacher while remembering their board policies and bylaws governing board member behavior. This is not the way TAT likes to give reports. Our members are devoted to providing the best educational environments for their students. The executive board and representative council are equally as devoted to building positive relationships with school board members, the superintendent and her team, CSEA, our TAT members, and those who are protected by the contract. We would much rather sing those praises than give reminders that misconduct has no place in TUSD schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Before we move on, just want to note in Ms. Amaker that Trustee Sweeney arrived at 5:19 for the record. CSEA update, Ms. Resendez.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Resendez, and I'm the CSEA Chapter President. At last month's board meeting, an update was given on the new custodian model. All of the principals, 5 custodians, Mr. Enterazzi, and Ms. Patterson all shared their thoughts on how this new model was working. These updates were primarily positive, with some areas that needed some additional growth. The collective sentiment expressed was that the new model has helped to bridge the gap between the maintenance department and the school sites, with improved communication and support, in addition to custodial coverage at each site being more consistent. Things took a negative turn when a board member proceeded to ask questions of the audience that seemed targeted to find flaws with this new model. These questions resembled similar objections raised by this individual prior to becoming a board member. We custodians in attendance left the meeting feeling confused and disappointed. It takes a lot of courage for our members to come to a board meeting and speak. Kudos to those who did come and update the board and share their experiences with this new custodial model. When he concluded his questions, he shared a proposal that he said he would support. The questions asked and the proposal itself violated current board bylaws. We ask that the board please refrain from this type of behavior in the future. As TUSD team members, we put our trust in our board members to always act with integrity, to adhere to all board policies and bylaws, and to always act in the best interest of the students and the staff and the community they represent. With that being said, CSA wishes to have a harmonious relationship with our educational community that includes district administration, school board members, and our fellow union, TAT. We must work together. It truly takes a village to ensure all of our students and their families get the best educational experience at TUSD. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Resendez. PTO update. Number 5, board communications.
All right, so I have 2 items, and I'm going to call them privileges I was able to experience in the last couple weeks. The first one was back to school night at the high school. I know the president was there, and we kept bumping into each other, not on purpose, trying to hit every classroom, and never enough time. But something stood out, and I apologize, I don't remember who the teacher was. But when I was speaking to them, they pulled me in and said, "Hey, let me show you my social contract." And I remember thinking, why would this teacher have a social contract? Not realizing, but it was so unique that they pulled me in, wanted me to see their social contract, and were so excited about it. So that was really cool. I thought it was really cool. So Ms. Libatique and your staff, thank you very much for that. The second one, in case you haven't noticed, I'm wearing a shirt that is bright like I am, or at least like I attempt to be. I had the privilege of going to Camp Keep with the 8th graders last week. Whew. It feels like last year. And I don't think there's enough time in my lifetime for me to say the positive things that I have to take away from that. Obviously, Mr. Lowe, it's your campus, so you get the overall gratitude, responsibility, all those fun things about it. And I'm sure you're aware, and I hope everybody else is. If not, they will be now, that Miss Ellen Anderson is phenomenal. I mean, we're talking up here phenomenal, because she did, from my understanding, is the majority of the legwork prior to. And I know that was at least a couple phone calls from me. And I know how fun I can be. And then the rest of the staff. I mean, we had Mr. Colby, we had Ms. Goldstein, we had Ms. McCormick, just off the top of my head, as the teachers that took care of all the issues, if there were any. And then I think there were 16, which parents, staff, volunteers, I don't know how the ratio worked out, but as the naturalists at the Camp Keep kept telling us, they get to work 23 hours a day, and they get 1 hour a day off. And truly, between a shower and maybe brushing your teeth, that's about all the time they had off. And so to have that many community volunteers is just amazing. The things we learned were great and fun and interesting. A lot about the coast, tide pools, things like that. But another thing that stood out quite a bit was there were a couple kids on the bus ride over that I'm like, I'm not sure how this is going to go. But I saw at least 2 light bulbs go off during the week. Excuse me. And that is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, everybody else was great, but to see those kids light up and do something that they didn't give the impression they would have beforehand, which is part of my fault, right? Because I did what I did. But just to see them sit down with their journals, to write stuff down, to be excited, to tell other kids how excited they were, to show off their work. It was a wonderful experience. So if you ever get the chance and you want to get dirty for a week, they're going again in January. And if you have any doubts about where our current generation may be going, this, I think, will change your mind in the most positive way.
Thank you, Vice President Kelly. Anyone else? I, too, attended the back-to-school night at Tehachapi High School and saw, as Vice President Kelly did, lots of social contracts and demonstrations, and in particular, one explanation of why the teacher was greeting the parents at the door, because of capturing kids' hearts. So that was great to see, and I relayed that to Principal Libatique and Superintendent Larson Everson. Teachers were professional but friendly. It was just a great night. And that's all we have for board communications. It's time for item 4, public comments. Public comments will be allowed. The board president will recognize any member of the audience wishing to speak on items not on the agenda but directly related to school business. Pursuant to Board Bylaw 9323, the board may limit comments to no more than 3 minutes per person. Public comment will also be allowed on each specific action item prior to board action. The president may allot time to those wishing to speak, but no action will be taken on matters presented and no discussion of non-agenda items will occur. If appropriate, the president or any member of the board may direct that the matter be referred to the superintendent's office for placement on a future agenda. Brian Reel.
Thank you, Board. Excuse me. I want to make it clear that by making a formal complaint regarding the Golden Hills facilities, that I'm 100% Team Golden Hills and 100% Team Tehachapi. Consider this. On Monday, following Hurricane Hillary, schools were closed, but parents at Golden Hills received a message. The message said, portions of Golden Hills received significant flooding due to the storm, and our staff has done a valiant job with flood remediation. That said, furniture was moved in classrooms for the cleanup effort, and rooms are still wet. We know the importance this community places on a safe place for learning, therefore Golden Hills will be open tomorrow. District staff will supervise students on the playground in the morning while teachers reassemble their rooms, and industrial fans will be in place in each affected room for ventilation and drying. Windows and doors in many classrooms will be open to allow fresh air ventilation when students return. To ensure student physical safety while classrooms are open for ventilation, the TUSD resource officer will be posted at Golden Hills for the day. Here's the problem. I made that up. That's not the message that parents received. The message that was actually sent out was that classrooms were clean, safe, and ready for learning. That seems to be at best an obfuscation. My son came home on Tuesday and told me that his classroom smelled like a 5-day-old cat tuna because there was an inch of water in the room and there was a bounce house blower upper running in the back. Sadly, there was no bounce house. Look, we know the classrooms were not ready for students when they returned because district office staff supervised Golden Hills students on the playground the morning while teachers reassembled their rooms from the cleaning. We know the classrooms were not clean or dry because the smell was so bad that many classroom doors and windows were left open for ventilation, contrary to district safety policy. To my knowledge, the TUSD resource officer was not actually posted at Golden Hills for the day. And that's fine, of course, because we all know that bad guys take a few days off after a hurricane. The district office has been adamant that there was no standing water in classrooms. I don't know how to square that with the environmental report, which says the bottom 12 inches of drywall in the affected classrooms was 70 to 90% moisture saturated, and at a 4-foot height, saturation was 5% or less. The substrate was 100% saturated in both affected and non-affected classrooms, and additional remediation measures were recommended by the environmental provider as students and staff continued to occupy. More than a week after children returned to classrooms, a follow-up visit noted that drywall moisture saturation had returned to levels suitable for occupancy. What would happen if I didn't speak up? Pretend nothing happened and let it happen again a few years later? Golden Hills probably needed to be closed for a few more days for proper remediation. Instead, we just opened it up.
Mr. Reel,
Honestly,
you need to wrap it up.
I'm wrapping it up. It's hard to be interested in sports fields, gymnasiums, and stadium speakers when it's accepted that my kids' classrooms will flood every few years and will pretend it didn't happen. Sunshine breeds trust, but semantics and obfuscation breed mistrust and conspiracy theories. Board, I hope you don't like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reel. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move to item 5, consent agenda. The board may bundle a number of items and act upon them together by a single vote through the use of a consent agenda. Consent items shall be items of a routine nature and items for which board discussion is not anticipated and for which the superintendent recommends approval. When any board member requests the removal of an item from the consent agenda, the item shall be removed and given individual consideration for action as a regular agenda item. Vice President Kelly, you had a remark.
Yeah, on item number 8, my wife's, Maren Kelly's name is listed. I just want to make sure that I don't need to recuse myself from that vote.
I don't believe so, because it's not unique to her.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Oops. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Kelly, I make the motion.
I'll second.
It was motioned by Vice President Kelly and seconded by Clerk Wood that the board approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Superintendent, information item, presentation, preliminary CASP data. Superintendent Larson Everson.
Thank you, President Kaminsky. In front of you at the dais, you should have a copy of the same report that is posted on the agenda. Just might help you have a closer view. So my intention this evening is to provide you with an overview of our district-wide preliminary CASP scores. If you can go back one slide, Brian. Thank you. CASP stands for California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, and represents the collection of annual state assessments that students take each spring, and includes smarter balanced tests in English language arts, math, and science, as well as the English language proficiency assessment for California, or the LPAC. So again, these are preliminary results. And Mr. McKay, if you could go to the next slide now, please. Thank you. Again, this data is preliminary that we're looking at. That's why I have my under construction note on there on the slide. But once the state finalizes the aggregate data, school districts will be notified and will be provided with a preview period. We're anticipating that the release of that data should happen sometime in October, but I say should because we're referencing the state of California and their timelines. So we'll see when we get them, but for right now, we do have the preliminary data, and we're going to focus on that for this evening. And my reason for doing so is that we do want to talk about how we're actively planning and adjusting to meet students' current needs. And as a district, data is a very, very important tool at all levels, at the district level, at the school level, at the classroom level, and at the student level. Individual student level data has been made accessible to parents, and our TUSD team has access to the preliminary test results through our kids data platform that we contract with Kern County Superintendent of Schools. And many, many, many districts in Kern County use that same platform because it affords us ease at our fingertips of manipulating data and looking at it from many different perspectives. So it's important to recognize that the data being shared this evening is very broad. It provides us with what I would like to call a balcony view. Those that work with me hear me say that phrase all the time, balcony view, taking a big picture where we can look for patterns and trends. It's also important to note that this data does not reflect students' current levels, as this is a view of where students were academically when they took the assessments last spring in April and May of 2023. And of course, you hear us often talk, and I'll be talking about them later, is the ongoing diagnostic testing that we do through iReady and the progress monitoring that we do through many different means, including iReady in math and language arts, K through 12, and ESGI for our younger students, et cetera. And those are real-time assessments that we're able to administer to students and look at those results and then use those results to guide our instruction forward. So nonetheless, this data is important. Again, taking that balcony view and looking at patterns and trends over time, looking for gaps district-wide in our data for all of these purposes. And I'll be sharing some key perspectives about the data with you this evening. So if we can go on to the next slide. Really, I'll share some key points about what we know of overall performance at this time. But again, for us, the more critical data and data essential to driving our instruction is the data we collect from our universal screeners and progress monitoring through iReady, which we're using K-12 in language arts and math. So let's take a look at the basics and go to the next slide. We'll start off with how many students took the CASP assessments in the spring of 2023, and that was 1,944 students. Which students participate in CASP testing? Grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11. And the participation rate that is required as part of the state dashboard is 95% participation rate. We don't know what our that's something that will come in later. We're certainly hoping, and we believe it to be over 95% and hopefully around 99%. I will share with you that last year, okay, I'm saying things that are confusing. So 22-23 is last year, and we don't have those results on participation yet. The year prior to that, our participation rate was 94%, which was low. The year prior to that, testing was optional, and during that optional year, we only had 66% of our students participating who are eligible to participate in the testing that participated. So if that just kind of helps to build a little bit of a bridge, that 2020-2021 school year was the optional year, going from 66%. So a lot of the data that I'll be showing this evening to use as a comparison tool will not include 2020-2021 because there were so few students that participated that particular year. Let's just jump in and start looking at overall data. So this again is a balcony view overall of all students, looking at scores from 21-22, the number of students that participated in that particular assessment, and then 22-23 and the number of students. So you can see in English language arts in 21-22, we had 740 students who participated in the assessment, and 36.51% were at the proficient or above level. For this last school year, 22-23, we had 828 students participate in the assessment, and they performed at a rate of 37% proficient or above. So there's a very slight increase there, but more students participating in the actual assessment. And that's the kind of data that, to get to the real numbers, when we have the certified data, the aggregate data, we'll be able to look at it a little bit more in depth. In mathematics, in 21-22, we had 446 students participate in that assessment, and 22% was our 22.02%, and then we raised that up this past school year in spring of 23 to 25% at proficient or above. So as you can see from the data detailed on the slide, there was about a 0.5% increase district-wide for all students in English language arts and about a 3% increase for all students in mathematics. And again, keep in mind that this is all students, including all subgroups and all grade levels that participated in the assessment. And again, we'll be taking a look at different grade levels and subgroups as we continue to go through the data. So let's go on to the next slide, because I wanted to give you a little bit of perspective, because although we're pleased to see growth, and we did see growth, it's a small amount in language arts and a little bit more significant in math. It's essential that we recognize that we still have a lot of work to do for our students in terms of supporting their achievement and academic performance and getting students back up to and beyond pre-COVID performance levels on this type of assessment. So while it's not an excuse, we do recognize the significant loss of time in school did have a profound impact on student outcomes here locally in TUSD, as well as throughout our state and our county and our nation. And it's not our goal to simply have students achieve pre-COVID percentages, but for us to ensure that our students continue to have growth and strengthen academically each year, and hopefully surpassing pre-COVID achievement levels ultimately. So that gives you a little look at where we were. English language arts, I'm sorry if you go back, Mr. McKay, we pre-COVID, district-wide, again, all student group, 46.91%. And you can see where we were in 21-22 and then 22-23. Again, that we had a year where there was no COVID testing in 19-20, because that was the year that school exited in March, so there was absolutely no COVID testing that year. And then the year that followed was the 66% participation rate, so that data is not included. But you can see where we started pre-COVID, 46.91 in 18-19 and 31.49 at proficient or above in mathematics. And again, we want to strive to reach that point and certainly beyond as quickly as possible. And I think you'll see from looking at a lot of the other data that I'm going to share with you that we're making progress in that direction with the interventions and different strategies that we have put in place. So let's go ahead and go on to the next slide, and we'll talk about elementary gains from spring of 2022 to spring of 2023. You can see there the percentages for each school. I have it listed there in the very left-hand column: Cummins Valley Language Arts, Cummins Valley Math, Golden Hills Language Arts, Golden Hills Math, Tompkins Language Arts, and Tompkins Math. And on the very right-hand side is the change since last year of just going from 21-22 to 22-23, what the increase or lack of increase or decline was for each school. So you can see Cummins Valley in language arts moved from 43% to 45%, which was a 2 percentage point gain for students at proficient or above. And then right on down the line for math, showing really great gains of 8 percentage points. For Golden Hills, we stayed even at 31% proficient or above in language arts, and a strong gain of 4 percentage points in mathematics. And then you can see for Tompkins Language Arts, they had an increase of 1 percentage point and 2 points for math. So again, as we go forward, we're going to look at some other different test scores, but as you will note, we're really pleased to see the consistent increases, with the most significant increases in mathematics. And I believe this is a testament to the focus, support, and attention provided in the content area of math, including KCSOS, working with our county office and providing training and support, our Pump It Up time, and many other components that have come into play, including RTI, win time at our school sites, and iReady implementation. So we're glad to see those gains and hope that they are going to continue to pump it up even more in the coming year. Let's move on and talk about JMS for a few minutes. You'll see I listed these out by grade level and the percent at proficient or above for the school year 21-22 and then 22-23, and then in that very far right-hand column listed the change since last year. So taking a look at middle school students and specifically JMS, you can see the trend of increase in math continued here for the most part. Not as positive is the lack of consistency in the area of language arts. We've had some discussion amongst our team on this issue, and one point we do know is that as students progress through the grade levels, the content standards deepen, as does the rigor, and students falling behind in higher grade levels often creates a wider gap, right? As they miss those skills, it's more difficult to catch up. So students, those students who may have been on the brink of struggling or were already behind academically when the pandemic hit, became significantly further behind, while those students who were on target may have been able to tread water, so to speak. Anyway, this data confirms again the consistency and efforts and the positive impact in the area of mathematics, and underscores our need to continue to support secondary language arts. You may recall that last spring we began implementing both language arts and math intervention teachers at the secondary level. And we hope that this continues this year. We're staffed to do so. Those interventions are in place and are being implemented at both JMS and THS. And we hope this will result in our students experiencing a gain, and that we'll see their academics strengthen, not just in math, but in language arts as well. Moving on to the high school, again, this is just for THS. Keep in mind that it's not all grade levels on the campus that participate in the assessment. It is only grade 11. So again, this is only grade 11 for THS. And as you can see, we had a dip for both language arts and mathematics. This was not a surprise to us, as I shared, with the rigor of the content and the amount of time that students experienced out of classroom instruction due to the pandemic. And based on our local assessments and observation of student needs, we certainly knew that we needed to deepen our remediation efforts, and that's why we have expanded intervention supports at the secondary level. Unfortunately, the staffing piece and getting that plan implemented, it takes some time for it to take traction and, you know, have an impact with students and take effect. So it's up and running, and we hope to see great gains from that as students progress through the school year. So moving on, let's talk about some bright spots, because I think we're all ready for that. We're going to talk a little bit about some of our different student subgroups. And first, I'll walk you through what's there on the chart. The different student groups that are listed on this particular chart are English learners, and we have math scores at the top, followed by English learners in English language arts. And then SWD is our students with disabilities in mathematics and students with disabilities in language arts. And then you'll see I went ahead and listed there 18-19, which was the pre-COVID performance rate, and then we have 21-22 and 22-23, and you'll see the changes, and these changes are very positive. So as I mentioned, that we have some celebrations here, that although we still have a lot of work to do to provide academic support and differentiation for all students, we're pleased to see that these positive outcomes, as we've been making changes, are impacting particular student groups. And it's, again, just affirmation and validation of the interventions and instructional adjustments are having a positive impact. So you can see in particular, there's a little asterisk there next to some of these groups and scores, and that's where I'm trying to indicate for you that we have exceeded the pre-COVID performance levels, okay? So when we look at English learners in math, the growth that we had from the change from spring 21 to this past spring was in excess of 6 percentage points. But also when you look at where we were pre-COVID in 18-19, you can see that there's a significant gain there and moving in the right direction for our English learner students. Same in language arts. You can see that pre-COVID, we were at 6.5% effectively for students being at proficient or above. And now we are at 12.34% proficient or above. So again, that's showing good gains with our English learner subgroup. Moving on to our students with disabilities, you can see where we were pre-COVID and where we are now, demonstrating some incremental growth for students with disabilities in the areas of math. And of course, we want those numbers to be higher, but it is very good to see that we're higher than we were pre-COVID in all three of those that I just discussed. Looking at students with disabilities in language arts, we made a small bit of progress, but have not yet superseded the pre-COVID level there. We'll go on and talk about another couple of different student groups. SED stands for socially economically disadvantaged students. And those are the first two groups listed there for math and for language arts, again showing 18-19, which is pre-COVID, 21-22, and then 22-23. You can see a little bit more stagnation there. I will say that this is a relatively large subgroup here in Tehachapi, our economically disadvantaged students. For 22-23, that subgroup consisted of 603 students. And we have a lot of work to do to raise achievement with this particular group of students. And we recognize in particular with these students that we have a very strong need to focus on regular attendance, and helping students to be present in school each day ensures that they receive the very critical instruction that we need. So again, we had 603 students socially, economically disadvantaged for 22-23. But one little bright spot, I didn't list it on the slide, but when we look back at 21-22, the number of students who were at standard not met for this particular subgroup was at 63%. And for this school year, 22-23, that was reduced to 49%. So, you know, we tend to want to focus on how many students are at proficient or above, but we also need to look at how many students we're bringing up from standard not met to approaching standard and so on. So again, once we have our aggregate data and we're really able to go deep, we're going to do a board workshop. That's the time when we'll really be looking at it from every which way that we can. Right now, it's pretty tough to do so with the limited amount of access to the data that we have. But you can see there's some gains for Foster, both in language arts and in math. And we'll go ahead and move on and walk you through a couple more student subgroups. The first one listed, homeless students, math, homeless language arts. And then we have our African American subgroup, mathematics, and African American English language arts. And again, you'll notice a couple of little asterisks on here, our homeless students in math. And this was actually a subgroup that increased in size over the last couple of years. But you can see that a lot of growth has occurred for those students. Pre-COVID, we were just over 3%, and now we're at 12.5%. So you can see those incremental gains there for those particular students in mathematics. In language arts, pre-COVID, 24.4% were at proficient or above, and we only made a very small amount of progress with those particular students over the course of the last year. So again, it's something that we have to work hard at, making sure that we are finding every way that we can to enable students to be able to be present at school and help them get access to the instruction that they need. Looking at African American students in mathematics, again, this was a really good gain to see that pre-COVID we were at 12.5% at proficient or above, and where we've landed after last spring is at 15.79, so almost at 16%, so that was good growth to see. Language arts, we still have a journey to go. Pre-COVID we were at 37.5%. That dipped down in 21-22 to 21.43% at proficient or advanced, and bounced back up with a good gain of almost 5 percentage points last spring. So again, clearly it's affirming to see the gains in math across the board, across different grade levels, across different subgroups, and at the same time, clearly we have more work to do in the area of language arts and mathematics, but we're starting to see some of those interventions that we have in place take hold, particularly in math. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. And this, I labeled this slide following third grade. I want to take a minute to explain to you how the slide is laid out, because there's a lot of data on this slide. So if you look across the top, going from left to right, you see grade 3 language arts, grade 3 math, grade 4 language arts, grade 4 math, grade 5 language arts, grade 5 math. And then down the side, I have the schools listed and the year. So Cummins Valley, 22-23, so on and so forth, all the way down. Those first 3 rungs are for Cummins Valley, then 3 rungs for Golden Hills, and then for Tompkins. So if we just start, let's look at the first row there next to the school listings, grade 3 English language arts. So if we look at the first green number there, 45%, that tells you the number of students who were at proficient or advanced as third graders in the 2021 school year. Now again, keep in mind that was when we had 66% of students participating, because the test was optional at that point in time. But in order to try to give you a depth and breadth of data, I did include it here so we could try to follow a cohort of students. So that is third grade, 45%. If you go up, you'll see in 21-22, third grade students, not the same students, but new group of third grade students, performed at 43% proficient or advanced, proficient or above in language arts. And then in 22-23, 37% proficient or above in language arts. That's looking at 3 distinct groups of third graders over a 3-year period of time. Now, if we want to go diagonally and follow the green percentages, follow with me here. In 2021, the third grade students were at 45% proficient or above. Jump over to 4th grade, English language arts for Cummins Valley, you'll see that 46% were at proficient or above in language arts. And then going to the next year, taking that same cohort of students up to grade 5, for this past spring, they were at 54%. So you see gains for that cohort of students. Is this making sense to you, how to follow that diagonal? Okay, and then when we look at Cummins Valley for mathematics, start with the purple number. You can see in 2021, that group of students of third graders, they were at 48% proficient or above. The next year's group of third graders performed at 47%, and the next year's group at 51%. If you go diagonally and follow the numbers to the right, you'll see that cohort of third grade students who started at 48% moved on as 4th graders and were at 30% proficient or above, and then bounced up to 38% proficient or above as 5th graders. Make sense? So I just want, because it's a different way to look at the level that students are coming in at as third graders, and then following students as they move on to 4th and 5th grade. And we had to do a lot of work to pull this data together because we don't have the aggregate scores yet, but this gives us a good picture. So moving on, we'll look at Golden Hills. You can see for Golden Hills in English language arts in grade 3, we started in 2021, that cohort of students was at 38% proficient or above. 21-22, we had 33% of the students proficient or above, 30% for the following year. And then following that diagonal line, that third grade cohort started third grade as 38% proficient or above. 4th grade was 29% proficient or above, and as 5th graders in language arts, 39% proficient or above. And then you can follow the purple line in mathematics, moving up and diagonally. And then Tompkins is our last group there, and you'll see 23% was the group of third graders in 2021, third graders in 21-22 at 23%, and then third graders in 22-23 came in at 41% proficient or above. And follow those diagonal performances to look at the cohorts. Guys still with me? Okay. I know it's a lot of data, and it's, you know, it takes time to walk through it all. So I wanted to make sure that you got a good look at that. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So what do we know? I mean, we talked a lot. This is preliminary data. We don't have the aggregate scores yet. Once we get the aggregate scores, we'll be able to have those uploaded into KIDS and into our data platforms to be able to manipulate the data a lot and make lots of comparisons and dive deeper into looking at our student performance. But we do know that we've had many gains, particularly for many of our subgroups and consistently in math. We can see, all of us from looking at the data, the significant repercussions from COVID, and that targeted interventions are needed for many of our different student groups. And we can also see in looking at the data that the interventions are effective and need to continue. And most importantly, for me, is the high quality first best instruction and how critical that is, because this is the instruction that students get all day long. It's not an intervention. It's what's happening from when the bell rings for class to start to when the bell rings for class to end, right? We want to make sure that we're using high leverage instructional strategies throughout our students' school day. So if we can go on to the next slide, just a few reminders about what we're doing to support positive student outcomes. We are implementing universal screeners in English language arts and mathematics through iReady. We also have intervention support and growth monitoring using our iReady model. Our elementary schools, 2 of them have a RTI model, which includes language arts and math at our Title I schools. We have a flex period program now at JMS to help support student needs. And we have our secondary English language arts and math interventions at both JMS and THS. We know we have our Pump It Up time that's happening with our PE team going in at elementary and having teachers get together, be able to talk about student growth and data and instructional practices. And our Pump It Up time at the secondary level is coordinated through use of substitutes so that teachers can gather as department teams and be able to talk about what their instructional needs are. At the elementary level, we have introduced this year, and it's off, I think, to a really strong start, is our Burst Tutoring Program. This is detailed in our LCAP, where we have a team of tutors that have been trained by Instructional Services, and they're going in and working with our primary students on basic literacy skills. And that seems, like I said, to be off to a really strong start. I mentioned our language arts and math supplemental intervention teachers at the secondary level. We're getting ready to launch our before and after school tutoring programs for this year. Of course, we have tutor.com still in play. We've added intervention specialists for all campuses this year, and there's a strong focus on attendance, our counseling referral process, and at-risk identifiers. We've also revamped our SST process to make sure it's consistent and identifying and supporting those students who really need it. And again, that focus on first best instruction and of course on our circles. And when I talk about circles, we talk about circle of influence and circle of control. And we know that, again, teaching bell to bell, that is definitely within our control to be able to select the most powerful strategies to use in our classrooms. And we know our teachers are out there working hard to support our students, and we appreciate all that they do and all that all of our staff does to support student success. So looking forward to what is next. We will continue to monitor our data and to use the data to guide our instruction and to guide the instructional supports that we put into place for our students. It is important for us to continue all the efforts we have poured into capturing kids' hearts to build students' confidence, their school connectedness, their trust, their relationships, and also their self-efficacy. We know how important it is for students to know what the learning objectives are within a classroom. Clear is kind, not just when we talk to adults, but also when we talk with students. When they know what the objective is for their learning, they perform better. We're also focused on high leverage instructional strategies throughout the school day. And finally, of course, when we get the aggregate data from the state and the dashboard is populated, then we will work with Mrs. Paxton, who's our Chief Administrator of Instructional Services, and provide a more in-depth dive into the finalized data sometime, I would anticipate, in December or January. We can put that together and have a dialogue about the data and really get you into kids and looking at how we look at the data at our end. So I think that that is it. I thank you. I know that's a long time to listen to somebody talk and to go through lots of data, but that is what I prepared for you this evening. So thank you.
Any questions or comments from the board? I just wanted to bring out one thing. And it came as no surprise. At JMS, the 7th grade English language arts teachers are veteran teachers. They take a lot of pride in their work. Not saying no one else does, but I've known them for a long time. And I know Mr. Lowe will verify they collaborate together as well as any teachers in this district. And that's from my personal observation. And what they did was quite remarkable. If you looked at on page 5 of the handout, the top slide, not only did they improve 5 points, but they also took last year's 6th graders and improved by 12 percentage points. Quite remarkable. And the thing is, none of us can make can snap our fingers, and teachers with 2 or 3 years of experience now have a dozen or more. That's just the value of experienced, outstanding teachers working together. And I just hope that even though teachers may have less experience, that they can bounce ideas off each other and formulate great lesson plans together. That's all I have. Thank you, Superintendent. Item 2, information item, board discussion on Destination Imagination.
This is a follow-up to the presentation that we had in August, and it's just an opportunity to discuss that presentation and for the board to provide any direction to staff.
I'll start the conversation. Superintendent, did you have any additional information about limitations possibly from our insurance providers or the attorneys that you haven't
No,
shared?
sir. Vice President Kelly, I have not been provided any direction from the board to look into the matter. So once I have direction, then I will take it from there.
Okay. I know it's been, what, a month since we first had people present on this, both people from DI and community members, as well as some staff. And so what I'm hoping to gain from this item is a discussion from us and to provide staff with some direction about what our next steps are. For me, it's more about, as much as I am in love with the program, it's about staff having a conversation with not only the attorneys, our insurance providers, but the Destination Imagination representatives to see what we can do within any limitations that insurance or attorneys may provide to benefit our students with this enrichment program. I know the last time there was a lot of discussion about, I don't think chainsaws brought up, but that's what comes to my head right now. But I know there were hacksaws and drills and all of those fun things that sometimes scare people. I don't think chainsaws were involved, but anyway. Power tools, thank you. But I know that there is a fair amount of this program that does not require those items because there are just a lot of improvisation where they might be using a sewing machine or needle and thread to make a costume or paint with cardboard. And so as far as I'm concerned, I would like to move forward with that conversation, but this is brought back to the board as a whole because I am not the board. I am just one part of it, but that's where I stand.
I will just echo Vice President Kelly's comments. Having been involved at least for 1 year as a judge at competitions, I see the value, not just for some kids, but for really any kid that needs a boost in their self-confidence. We did talk about it last month about the special education students. And I think I saw a student that had been in my office quite a bit, and she was having not just a great time, but participating in the competition. So I know she learned from it. Yeah, so Superintendent, if you could look into the, I'm more concerned with with CISC, our insurance. And also, as Vice President Kelly was speaking, I was thinking, well, we have woodshop class at the high school. There must be certain controls that we have to put on it, especially at the lower grades. But, I've seen the kids, well-rounded students that not only spoke at that meeting, but also to our Rotary Club. And just, it does so much for them with public speaking and presentations. So I would be, I just hope that there's a teacher out there that would take a stipend to be an advisor for the club at school.
I'd like to move forward, and I see the value in it also, but I just want to make sure everything's going to be safe and up on the up and up, so.
I might insert that there are many activities that can be done without power tools and without, just with the imagination, with paper, pen, pencil, tape, few balloons, etc. Because I have had engineering students at the college level try to build a cardboard boat that float across the swimming pool. They actually were able to do that. And so anything to create imagination and think out of the box, so to speak. That gets students to learning.
Since I haven't spoken, I would also like to move forward with it. I think it's a valuable program, and problem-solving skills are really hard to train, and I think that really, really teaches them to not rely on somebody and really use their head and their imagination, and it's invaluable throughout their life, let alone education, because I think it'll be twofold. It will come back when it comes to their education, and they can apply what they learn in their economic and educational lives as well.
Is that good, clear direction?
I hear consensus, so I will check it out with our insurance provider, CISC, and see what suggestions, and it sounds like you all would be open to. I can probably find out from our presenters which school districts in Kern County are current practitioners to learn maybe a little bit about what their models are and go from there. And I'll bring that back. I'm not sure if that will be in October or November, but bring it back to you when I have it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Information item number 3, first read of Exhibit 1113-E, 1 in parentheses, district and school websites.
Yes, this is a first read on this item. If you recall, at the last meeting, we had a very long list of board policies that we brought forward, actually the last 2 meetings as first reads and then for approval. And this exhibit is tied to the policy, and it is written by the California School Boards Association currently to incorporate some revisions based on changes in law. And so we brought the exhibit forward as well for this evening as an information item, and then intend to bring it forward at the October meeting for the board's consideration for approval. Thank you.
I'm just looking at the first, under materials to prominently display, it says, the following must be posted in a prominent location on the district's website, and there's 10 items.
There are many, and we've had staff very diligently go through to make sure that we're in compliance with all of them. So most of what is in the policy, though, as far as the revision, again, reflects, for example, the update reflects that the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing is now named the Civil Rights Department. So the policy or exhibit to the policy itself is addressing that particular language change, if this makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Actually, I'd like to make one comment to the superintendent and staff. I want to think, looking at the website, that we are on top of this prior to anyway. I think, there's a few small tweaks here and there, but for the most part, we've got it covered. So I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a problem with the word prominent. People are going to have different definitions of what prominent is.
Are you saying it's subjective?
Very much so.
Yes, sir, I agree.
So I'm sure you and your staff will do the best.
We did, and in fact, we did some relabeling of a few items to try to have them be more prominent just by how they're labeled on the website, so for ease of being able to find them.
Okay, and our next item, item 4, information item, acknowledge receipt of initial proposal from the Tehachapi Association of Teachers and CTA/CTA/NEAs to the Tehachapi Unified School District for a successor agreement. This notice is being provided pursuant to Government Code Section 3547.
Yes, Mr. Kaminsky, this is a information item, and it is to acknowledge the receipt and to put it on the record and for the public that the district has received an initial proposal from the Tehachapi Association of Teachers.
Any questions or comments from the board? Information item 5.
Okay, as with the proposal, the
Oh,
initial
sorry, I was
proposal.
scrolling, I didn't read it.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it was a
No, I
pause
was
or
trying, anyway. 5, information item. Acknowledge receipt of initial proposal from the California School Employees Association and its Chapter 466 for 2023/2024 reopener negotiations. This notice is being provided pursuant to Government Code Section 3547.
Thank you, Board President Kaminsky. Again, as with Tehachapi Association of Teachers proposal, this is presented this evening as an information item to acknowledge for the record and for the public the district's receipt of the initial proposal from the California Employees Association, Chapter 466.
Any questions or comments from the board? Item 6, public hearing on the Tehachapi Unified School District's initial proposal to the Tehachapi Association of Teachers /CTA/NEA for a successor agreement. This public hearing is pursuant to Government Code Section 3547. So at 6:28, we're adjourning the regular meeting to hold a public hearing on the Tehachapi Unified School District's initial proposal to the Tehachapi Association of Teachers, CTA/NEA for a successor agreement. This public hearing is pursuant to Government Code Section 3547. Are there any public comments? Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'm adjourning the public hearing at 6:29, and the regular meeting is reconvened. Item 7, public hearing on Tehachapi Association of Teachers, CTA, any initial, did I get? No, that's right. Public hearing on Tehachapi Association of Teachers, CTA/NEA's initial proposal to the Tehachapi Unified School District for a successor agreement. This public hearing is pursuant to Government Code Section 3547. So I'm adjourning the regular meeting at 6:29 to hold a public hearing on the Tehachapi Association of Teachers, CTA/NEA's initial proposal to the Tehachapi Unified School District for a successor agreement. This public hearing is pursuant to Government Code Section 3547. Are there any public comments? Any other discussion? Seeing none, I am adjourning the public hearing at 6:30, and the regular meeting is reconvened. Item 8, public hearing on the Tehachapi Unified School District's initial proposal to the California School Employees Association and its Chapter 466 for 2023/2024 reopener negotiations. This public hearing is pursuant to Government Code Section 3547. So the regular meeting is adjourned at 6:30 to hold a public hearing on the Tehachapi Unified School District's initial proposal to the California School Employees Association and its Chapter 466 for 2023/2024 reopener negotiations. This public hearing is pursuant to Government Code Section 3547. Are there any public comments? Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, the public hearing is adjourned at 6:30, and the regular meeting is reconvened. Item 9, public hearing on the California School Employees Association and its Chapter 466 initial proposal to the Tehachapi Unified School District for 2023/2024 reopener negotiations. This public hearing is pursuant to Government Code Section 3547. The regular meeting is adjourned at 6:31 to hold a public hearing on the California School Employees Association and its Chapter 466 initial proposal to the Tehachapi Unified School District for the 2023/2024 reopener negotiations. This public hearing is pursuant to Government Code Section 3547. Are there any public comments? Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, the public hearing is adjourned at 6:31 and the regular meeting is reconvened at 6:31. For item 10, appointment of labor negotiators. The board will consider and possibly take action to appoint one or more labor negotiators to represent the board during 2023/2024 negotiations with the Tehachapi Association of Teachers and California School Employees Association and its Chapter 466. The board will identify in open session any representatives designated. Proposed negotiators, Superintendent Stacy Larson Everson, Hojat Intezari, Chief Administrator of Business Services, and Candace Bedoyan, DWK Legal Counsel. Superintendent.
Thank you, sir. Government Code Section 54957.6 provides that notwithstanding any other provision of law, a legislative body of a local agency may hold closed sessions with the local agency's designated representatives regarding salaries, salary schedules, and compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of its represented and unrepresented employees. So this is the authority that we're asking for this evening, is for Mr. Intezari, myself, and Ms. Bendoyan to have the authority to represent on behalf of the district.
I had one question, and I know there's other members of the team, so what's the difference between this approval and them being on the team as well?
Yes, and Ms. Bendoyan would probably be the one to explain that more in depth than I can. This is authority for any one of us, Mr. Intezari, myself, or Ms. Bendoyan, to represent the interests of the district and discuss those interests with the board in closed session. The difference being we do have a bargaining team, a full bargaining team of individuals that represent the district in the bargaining process.
Okay, thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
a good explanation. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, it was recommended that the board approve the appointment of labor negotiators. The board will consider and possibly take action to appoint one or more labor negotiators to represent the board during 2023/2024 negotiations with the Tehachapi Association of Teachers and California School Employees Association and its Chapter 466. The board will identify in open session any representatives designated. The proposed negotiators are Superintendent Stacy Larson Everson and Hojat Intezari, Chief Administrator of Business Services, and Candace Bedoyan, DWK Legal Counsel, as presented. Do I have a motion?
Kelly, make the motion.
Second.
It was moved by Vice President Kelly, seconded by Trustee Cooper, that the board approve the appointment of labor negotiators as read. And it's a roll call vote. Mrs.
President Kaminsky?
Aye.
Vice President Kelly?
Aye.
Clerk Wood? Aye. Trustee Cooper?
Aye.
Trustee Sweeney?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Item 11, approval of Tehachapi Unified School District's initial proposal to the Tehachapi Association of Teachers/CTA/NEA for a successor agreement. This notice is being provided pursuant to Government Code Section 3547. Superintendent Larson Everson.
Thank you, President Kaminsky. The district's initial proposal was developed with input from management and consultation with legal counsel in an effort to address the contractual items that will improve district communication as well as student outcomes and better serve all of us here in the district.
Okay.
And the document is attached.
Any questions or comments from the board? So it's recommended the board approve the Tehachapi Unified School District's initial proposal to the Tehachapi Association of Teachers /CTA/NEA for a successor agreement as presented. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Kelly, a second.
It was moved by Clerk Wood and seconded by Vice President Kelly that the board approve the initial proposal to the Tehachapi Association of Teachers CTA/NEA for a successor agreement as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 12, approval of initial proposal from Tehachapi Unified School District to the California School Employees Association and its Chapter 466 for 2023/2024 reopener negotiations. This notice is being provided pursuant to Government Code Section 3547. Superintendent Larson Everson.
Yes, thank you, President Kaminsky. As I mentioned, both of the initial proposals for both TAT and CSEA were developed with input from our management team in consultation with legal counsel. And as you can tell, we're ramping up to start the bargaining season. And we have dates on calendar. I want to thank, since we're here, I want to thank both TAT and CSEA leadership for working with us so we could all take this step together with our initial proposals at this meeting this evening. We have our first bargaining dates approaching at the beginning of October, and we're looking forward to good sessions filled with lots of communication and working together to, again, best serve our district, the students and families that we're here to do this work for. Thank you.
Okay, it's been recommended the board approve the initial proposal from Tehachapi Unified School District to the California School Employees Association and its Chapter 466 for 2023/2024 reopener negotiations as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
I'll second.
It was motioned by Trustee Cooper, seconded by Trustee Sweeney, that the board approve the initial proposal from Tehachapi Unified School District to the California School Employees Association and its Chapter 466 for 2023/2024 reopener negotiation as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? Motion carries 5-0. Item 13, approval to adopt resolution number 01-SEP23, acknowledging 2023 Red Ribbon, October 23rd to 31st, 2023. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Kaminsky. I'm not sure why it's titled Red Ribbon Week when the days are actually longer than a week, but we're going to go for it. We've been doing this for a long time in the field of education. Red Ribbon Week campaign is a nationally recognized program, and it's designed to encourage drug prevention and awareness as well as promote positive and healthy behaviors. And we're very happy this evening to present the resolution for your consideration and hopefully approval so we can celebrate this with our students October 23rd through the 31st. Thank you.
And I think I know the answer. I have to read this resolution, correct?
No, you're not required to read the resolution. It's
Okay.
posted on the agenda, so we're good to go.
Very good. That's what I wanted to hear. Not that I wouldn't mind reading it, but. So it's recommended that the board approve to adopt resolution number 01-SEP23, acknowledging 2023 Red Ribbon Week, October 23rd to 31st, 2023, as presented. It's a roll call vote. Mrs. Amaker.
Can we do a motion?
Oh, I need the motion, I'm sorry.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, it was moved by Clerk Wood and seconded by Trustee Sweeney that the board approve to adopt resolution number SEP 23, acknowledging 2023 Red Ribbon October 23rd to 31st as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Wait, it's
Aye.
a resolution.
Oh, it's a roll call vote. See, that's what messed me up.
It's okay.
Now, Mrs. Amaker.
President Kaminsky,
Aye.
Vice President Kelly,
Aye.
Clerk Wood,
Aye.
Trustee Cooper,
Aye.
Trustee Sweeney,
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item 14, approval to adopt resolution number 02 SEP 23, acknowledging the week of the school administrator, October 8th to the 14th, 2023. Superintendent?
Thank you, President Kaminsky. The CDE encourages recognition of the dates of October 8th through the 14th as Week of the School Administrator, and that's in alignment with California Education Code Section 44015.1. In observance of the importance of educational leadership at the school district, and county levels, the second full week in the month of October of each year is encouraged to be designated as Week of the School Administrator. And in accordance with this, we bring this forward this evening for the board's consideration and hopefully approval. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the board? It's been recommended that the board adopt resolution number 02 SEP 23, acknowledging Week of the School Administrator, October 8th to the 14th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So motion.
I'll second.
It was motioned by Trustee Cooper and seconded by Vice President Kelly. The board approved to adopt resolution number 02 SEP 23, acknowledging Week of the School Administrator, October 8th to the 14th, as presented. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, roll call vote.
Actually, before can we rectify, it was Sweeney and not myself. That was
Oh.
the second.
The second? Second was Trustee Sweeney. Roll call vote.
President Kaminsky,
Aye.
Vice President Kelly,
Aye.
Clerk Wood,
Aye.
Trustee Cooper,
Aye.
Trustee Sweeney,
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Item 7, business. It's been requested that we take a break. I could use one. Get some moisture in my mouth. We will adjourn for 10 minutes. It is 6:43. We are reconvening the board meeting at 6:55. We're on item 7, business. Number 1, certification of unaudited actuals for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Mr. Intezari.
Thank you very much, President Kaminsky. We're proud to announce the unaudited actuals, which is us closing the books on the fiscal year 2022-2023. We're happy to report that the financials are demonstrating that we are still remaining in strong fiscal health. The difference, so while the forms might look similar to the interim budget reports, the difference is that the unaudited actuals are reporting what has actually happened, what has actually hit. There's no forecasting, projecting, estimations. These are actual numbers. So for those following along, I'll call out the page, the actual page of the attachment, and for those just listening, you're going to hear a lot of numbers. So good luck. All right, so I'd like to take you to page 6 of the attachment. So the financials are not just the actual like revenues and expenses. Not only are there other things that trigger or directly relate to our revenues, there's also other compliance requirements, maintenance of efforts, and things like that that we'll be touching on. So on page 6, this is the section for our average daily attendance. So for those that are new, average daily attendance is essentially enrollment prorated for the actual attending school. I don't have a better way to call it that, anything else, just prorated attendance, or the frequency that a student would attend school. There you go. All right, so for page 6, we would see that our P2ADA, which was reported right before we adopted our budget, 3,914.72, and this figure is what is going to fund us for this year based on the estimate, and then we will true up between February and June. This is a very good figure, and we're very proud of this number. Not only does this demonstrate a strong enrollment, but also a high frequency of attendance. According to reputable sources at the state level, average attendance for California school districts was about 91%, and we were punching at about 93%. Now that this year they're reporting about 93%, we're about 95%. So our student attendance is strong, and while that directly ties to revenue, I think it does speak to the work that's going on and enticing students to come to school. All right, so I'd like to direct you to page 10, and this is where we'll dive into the financials. I know there's a lot of numbers, but I will try my best to just highlight the ones, the bigger ones. All right, so for our local control funding formula, this is the money that is generated through attendance. For 22-23, we actually received $45,072,000, and in total revenue, for states and grants is a total of $70.7 million. This number came up $1.9 million higher than we were estimating in May, and that has to do with the governor's budget and lower reductions to some of the grants. The block grants were about to be cut in half, and that would have been a significant drop, and they ended up only losing one about 14% and the other about 6%. So that was really good news for us. In terms of unrestricted expenses, we spent about $37.4 million in unrestricted expenses, $24 million in restricted expenses, so state and federal programs, for a total of $61,468,000. We had contributions of about $7.1 million from the general fund to restricted programs, and that is typically for the purposes of funding special education. They always require contribution because the funds from the state and federal government are never enough to cover, as well as required contributions towards routine restricted maintenance. So this brought our revenues exceeding expenses on the unrestricted side by $3.4 million, and on the restricted side by $5.7 million. And so adding $3.4 million to the unrestricted budget brings our ending fund balance to $18.17 million. Of that, the components include 9% reserve as required by the board, $10,479,941. This is to fund our other post-employment benefits. This number is derived from an actuarial study that we're required to obtain, and we're proud to be able to do this. Not every school district offers strong post-employment benefits, so for those that have a long years of service with the district will be entitled to benefits until they reach Medicare age, and we're happy to provide that. We've also, through board commitments, set aside $700,000 for educational technology, $1 million for textbook adoption, and $2,616,000 for the purposes of additional facilities related to transitional kindergarten. In terms of the 2023-2024 budget, so when we estimated back at the end of May and reported in June, we were estimating about $48.7 million in LCFF revenue, which is about 8.2% higher. Since our enrollment has been very steady, this corresponds with the 8.22% COLA that we're supposed to receive. So bringing next year's expenses are going to be $64,841,000. This is an 8% reduction from where we ended 2022-2023, and that has to do with because with the block grants that we received large sums at one time, and so the restricted funds, you're going to see a large reduction, but our LCFF revenues, the unrestricted continuous money, is going up. We're projecting expenses of $64.99 million, but as the year goes on in bargaining, these numbers are going to change as we have more information. You know, there's not a whole lot to know about how the school year is going to start all the way back in May. All right, next page, the 11, just to answer some questions, because I know some numbers do stand out. So the column on the far right indicates the change in percentage from where 2022-2023 actually ended, and what 2023-2024 is budgeted when we adopted the budget. Education Protection Act, Object Code 8012, it's about halfway down the page in the LCFF sources. You'll see that we received $3.3 million last year, and now we're projecting $12.8 million. So that's at the state level. They reduced the education protection money because of delayed income taxes and other things going on at the state level, but because this is our local control funding formula, if one of those numbers goes down, the state aid will make up the difference, so we're still entitled to the same amount of money. So it's not an error, it's just there was an anomaly in 2022-2023. I did receive a question about in the federal revenues for special education discretionary grants. You'll notice that it went from $238,000 last year to about $107,000. This is a one-time grant, and so we reduced our contributions from unrestricted to restricted by utilizing some of these grants that we have available, just shifting these costs in order to optimize our spending. Okay, page 12. So in the federal revenue section, 2023-2024 includes the remaining ESSER money. ESSER 3, we have about $3.3 million left. We spent about $4 million of it in this year. And so this is going to be the end of that era of windfall money that school districts have probably never seen. And I don't know if they ever will, but it has definitely been an interesting experience as a new CBO to be able to provide all of these additional services and just improvements around the district. If you go down to about the middle of the page, total other state revenue, right above it, there's an additional number in the unrestricted state revenue column, $782,000, and next year $773,000. That is the new money that comes from the state for transportation. We used to only receive $500,000 as part of the local control funding formula. Now we receive an extra $700,000. And we've used that money to increase the services that we offer and at no cost to any of our families, and we're proud to do so. Moving on to page 13. I'm just going to go down to the certificated salaries section and just cover the total. We ended with 21.63 million in certificated salaries and still projecting 22.2 million. That is an increase of 3%. And while that, so that has to do with people moving along the salary schedule. It doesn't include the increases that were given in 2022, 2023 are already built in. And so this is just the change, and that kind of meets expectations. If once we conclude bargaining, these numbers will change. We also have classified salaries going from 10.66 million to 10.7 million. We have a lot of classified people that are on the top end of their scale, and there's also a lot of, that is the classification that has the most people vacating positions and new people coming in, and so it would make sense that it's going to be about balanced. Going down, there was a question about the STRS amount in 2023-2024. Because the difference between last year and what we were projecting when we adopted the budget is an increase of 9%, and that has to do with the amount of salaries that are in the restricted column. When we're adopting a budget, it assumes 100%, that the positions are filled 100% of the time, and so those amounts are going to be high, and then inevitably as things happen and those positions aren't filled 100%, those numbers would come down. Our total employee benefits saw an increase of 4.5%. We do have some expected increases. So as salaries increase and people move along the schedule, their corresponding benefits costs would also increase. We also have an experienced increase in the classified CalPERS. The employer contribution is going to increase, and that's baked into this estimation here. For total books and supplies, we ended the year with 3.4 million, and we were projecting 3.9 million in next year. There is a shift where we have more of the costs being absorbed in the unrestricted portion of the budget, and that's just because we don't know what anticipated increased costs are, additional needs of the schools, things like that. Moving on to page 14. Looking at services and other operating expenses. On the unrestricted side, we're increasing from 5.7 to 6.1. Obviously, the cost of things are anticipated to increase. But on the restricted side, as the restricted spending decreases, we're going from 3.6 million to 2.8. So that's resulted in a decrease in services. It doesn't mean that things are getting cheaper. It's just as these one-time dollars are starting to dwindle, the expenses are less. I did receive a question about the total amount that is budgeted in capital outlay. So last year, capital outlay is big ticket items, assets. So, if I buy a microphone, we just expensed money, we spent it. But if I buy a vehicle, right, I have an asset. It carries value, it depreciates, but I can sell it, so it's worth tracking, and that's why it's in its own separate section. So the cost, while it says that we spent $661,000 last year and we're projected to spend $2.6 million, that has to do with, I don't know if anyone recalls, but the board did authorize over the last year the purchase of 5 school buses. 3 are participating in the reimbursement program through the Air Pollution Control District, and 2 are to increase our ability to serve our students. And that comes at a high cost. We've also had a lot of capital improvements in our buildings, at the stadium, things like that. Once you start spending over $5,000, it becomes an improvement. So while that number could potentially change, it does at least consider that we are making these significant investments. All right. So if I can take you to page 58 of the attachment. Are there any questions about the financials? No? Okay. So if I can take you to page 57 and 58, I did receive a question about what's called the current expense formula. So this is a long time standing formula that we are required to report, and what it is looking for is how much money is spent on salaries that are in the classroom. And there are certain expenditures that do have to be backed out that are considered not to count. Some of those being things that are considered like community services, fringe benefits for retired people, facilities, acquisitions, things like that. But then we get into the other round of reductions, and this is where it kind of creates an issue for us. We're required to have a percentage of 55% of the budget being spent on salaries that are in the classroom. But when you consider there are some flaws in this system, for example, one of the things that we back out is the cost of transportation, which is a challenge because we've been giving more money for transportation, so now we have to back out more money out of this calculation. But if you go to page 58, you'll see that although we didn't meet the 55%, we reached 54.11%. That difference of $454,000, when you're talking about a $70 million budget, $454,000 in salaries could be, the difference of a few retirements at different schools, vacancies, just some of these uncontrollable kinds of items. That's why the state allows that we file for a waiver through the county, especially in a time of large one-time investments through the state and federal government. We've had more spending that doesn't apply to directly in the classroom, so the waiver is very common to be filled, but this is a number that we track and we try to stay as close as possible. So by reaching that 54.11%, as we see those expenditures come down, you'll see that 55% will be more likely to be met. Any questions about the CEA form? Okay, great. All right, and so a very important calculation that we have is the maintenance of effort. So if I can take you to page 76 of the attachment, this should be labeled the special education maintenance of effort. And simply what that means is the way that maintenance of effort is measured is by dollars. And there are tests that we have to meet to determine whether we are spending the same amount on special education as we did in years prior. This is an important number to monitor because once you spend that money, you do have to maintain that level, but there are multiple tests. You can start with how much you spent in both state and your local money, the local money being what comes from the SELPA, or just what you spent in terms of from the SELPA. Or if you don't meet those tests, you can just you can calculate how much you spent per student. But with the significant investments that we've made into special education, you can see that we have spent that the maintenance of effort from spending last year was about 10.5 million, and this year we spent 12.8. So while we are proud to be able to offer these services to our needy population, it is a number that we have to monitor, but it's not impossible or anything. While it is a larger expense, a 28% increase, it's a number that we can sustain, and the state has dedicated resources to how much we spend on special education, and that's being reflected in this higher number. So it's not a number that we let just kind of go wild, but it is a number because the COLA is also applying to the add-on that we get for special education students. We're expecting to be spending more, and we're doing just that. Most of that money is spent on people, and it's working out for us. That covers the highlights of the unaudited actuals, but we're happy to report that we're able to meet the board's required reserve for economic uncertainties. We're very proud that the other post-employment benefits can be funded, not just now, but ongoing. So it's something that we can continue to offer, and also setting aside funds for some of these large upcoming projects, like having to have additional capacity for TK. Typically, we would set aside $500,000 for textbook adoption, but after reviewing just one textbook adoption for math with our chief of instruction, $500,000 wasn't going to cut it. And so, but we're very pleased to be in this really unique situation with schools where we have the resources to meet the needs of our students. Before, we used to have to kind of pick between, like someone would bring up something and they were totally right. We did need to do this, but we couldn't. Now we really have the ability to check off a lot of boxes in terms of supplies that were needed at our schools. We've been able to meet those needs, and now we're starting to raise the bar in terms of like some of those bigger ticket items. Very pleased, and I look forward to bringing you the first interim revisions in December, which will report our status as of October 31st.
Thank you, Mr. Intezari. Any questions, comments from the board? So it's recommended the board certify the unaudited actuals for 2022-2023 as submitted and authorize the superintendent or her designee to file the necessary documents with the Office of the Kern County Superintendent of Schools as presented. Do I have a motion?
Kelly, make the motion.
Second.
This is motion by Vice President Kelly and seconded by Trustee Cooper. The board approved certification of unaudited actuals for the 2022-2023 school year or fiscal year as presented. Roll call vote. Ms. Amaker?
President Kaminsky.
Aye.
Vice President Kelly.
Aye.
Clerk Wood.
Aye.
Trustee Cooper.
Aye.
Trustee Sweeney.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Item 2, approval of resolution number 03 SEP 23 establishing 2021-2022 GAN appropriations limitation recalculation and 2023-2024 adjusted GAN appropriations limitation. Mr. Intezari.
Thank you, President Kaminsky. This is essentially a formality, but we are required to report on this what we call the GAN limit, which is essentially a law that was passed in order to ensure that there isn't unnecessary spending at the government level, to ensure that there isn't just a tax surplus. And so the limitations that government code has put on us in 2022-2023 was that we were not able to receive in direct tax proceeds from our local community, I guess. It could not exceed 33.89 million in 2022-2023, of which we received 13.67 million. And in 23-24, the limit is 35.54 million, of which we are projected to receive 12.46 million. So we are in no way anywhere near these limitations, and we seek your approval of the resolution.
Yeah, it's recommended. The board have any questions? So it's recommended the board approve resolution number 03 SEP 23 establishing 2022-2023 GAN appropriations limitation recalculation and 2023-2024 adjusted GAN appropriations limitation as presented. Do I have a motion?
Kelly, a motion.
I'll second.
It was motioned by Vice President Kelly and seconded by Trustee Sweeney. The board approved resolution number 03 SEP 23 establishing 2022-2023 GAN appropriations limitation recalculation and 2023-2024 adjusted GAN appropriations limitation as presented. It's a roll call vote. Mrs. Amaker.
President Kaminsky.
Aye.
Vice President Kelly.
Aye.
Clerk Wood.
Aye.
Trustee Cooper.
Aye.
Trustee Sweeney.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Item 3, approval of the agreement between Walden University and Tehachapi Unified School District for licensure programs. Mr. Intezari.
Thank you, President Kaminsky. This agreement will allow the district to establish a partnership with Walden University to support current and future student-teacher internship requests. This comes at no cost to the district and is only to the benefit of the district as it establishes a partnership for current and future recruitment needs. We seek your approval for this agreement.
Any questions or comments from the board? It's recommended the board approve the agreement between Walden University and Tehachapi Unified School District for licensure programs as presented. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
I'll second.
It was motioned by Trustee Sweeney, seconded by Clerk Wood, at the, a board approved the agreement between Walden University and Tehachapi Unified School District for licensure programs as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Item 4, approval of declaring certain district property as surplus/obsolete at JMS. Mr. Intezari.
Jacobson Middle School is requesting the listed items primarily consisting of broken or worn furniture to be declared surplus to be properly disposed of. The items carry no value. We seek your approval to declare the items surplus.
Any questions or comments from the board? Let's recommend the board approve declaring certain district property as surplus/obsolete at JMS as presented. Do I have a motion?
So motion.
I'll second.
Was it? Okay. It was motioned by trustee Cooper, seconded by trustee Sweeney. The board approved declaring certain district property as surplus/obsolete at JMS as presented. It's a roll call vote. Mrs. Amaker?
President Kaminsky.
Aye.
Vice President Kelly.
Aye.
Clerk Wood.
Aye.
Trustee Cooper.
Aye.
Trustee Sweeney.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Intezari. Instructional services, item 8. Mrs. Paxton. First item is an information item, secondary extended field learning experiences.
All right, good evening. Per Board Policy 6153, all field trips which extend 100 miles or more beyond the boundaries of the school district must be approved by the superintendent. The written approval of parent or guardian is required for all field trips. The following upcoming extended field trip learning experiences listed for the board's information have been approved by the superintendent. And the field trips include Tehachapi High School CTE class to Porterville Fairgrounds for Trades Day on September 28th. Tehachapi High School mathletes to Silver Valley High School in Yermo for varsity mathletes competition on October 18th. Jacobson Middle School 8th grade Patriot team to Knott's Berry Farm for Incentive and Energy in Motion tour on November 6th. Tehachapi High School mathletes to Boron High School for varsity mathletes competition on November 15th. Tehachapi High School mathletes to Desert Christian High School in Lancaster for varsity mathlete competition on February 21st. Tehachapi High School CTE class to Cal State Bakersfield for CSUB Engineering Day on February 23rd. Tehachapi High School mathletes to Bishop High School for varsity mathlete competition on March 6th. And the last one is Tehachapi High School CTE class to Saracoso College in Ridgecrest for Saracoso commencement ceremony on May 10th.
Any questions or comments from the board?
The high school athletes to Boron on November 1st, is that one still on? Because you may have missed that one. Because they have November 15th for Boron, but also we show November 1st for Boron.
These
One's
are
the
only,
JV team.
yeah, and these are only the permission slips that my office has received. So if they are attending that one, we don't have that yet.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Paxton. Item 9, future items. And Superintendent Larson Everson, this isn't for a board meeting, but I forgot to mention it during board communications. If you could get, no hurry, no rush, but get with the principals. Last year, Clerk Wood and Trustee Cooper and I went to THS and CV, and so now it's we'll start with the other 4, no particular order, and definitely after parent conference week.
How about if we wait until at least mid-October?
Yeah, that's fine. No, it's not. Anything else from the board member wants to put in future items? Okay, we'll move on to item 10, launch.
All right. Well, as is our tradition, and following the strategies of capturing kids' hearts, we end our board meetings each and every time with a launch that's intended to send us all off for the evening on a positive note and with a great deal of energy. There were a lot of numbers crunched this evening and a lot of long presentations, so I have no doubt that our esteemed new special ed director, Mr. Tay Mock, will do just that in energizing us all. So welcome, Mr. Mock.
All right, good evening, board. President Kaminsky, Superintendent Larson Everson, thank you for having the honor today of presenting to you the launch. And so a little bit of background about myself. I've been a coach for about 17 years. And what I love to do is inspire. That's what a coach does. They not only coach, mentor, guide, they inspire. So I do a lot of investigation on inspiring videos. And this is what I found quite a while ago, and I used to show my staff this back in the day when I was a site leader. So it's a question that I have for all of you. How many of you guys were teachers? Are teachers? Know a teacher? Everybody should raise their hands, right? Okay. So this video is about what would it be like without teachers?
That's what you're gonna ask her too?
Chaos.
Because I won't learn.
We'll start that over, sorry.
No, no worries.
That's what you're gonna ask her too?
That's a hard question. World without teachers. What would the world be like without teachers?
Chaos.
Because I won't learn anything.
The younger generation wouldn't have anyone to look up to learn from. Walk around ignorant. I mean, we could keep the teachers, but just no homework. That'd be pretty cool.
Everybody would be going cuckoo and we wouldn't do anything.
I think that is the scariest thought that anyone could ever have. I think it would be craziness just because I feel like teachers are, besides our parents, the first people we meet who like shape who we become.
I haven't always been like the best student throughout my whole life.
I was always in trouble.
I had suffered 3 Fs and I realized like, oh, whoa, I need to fix that, you know?
4th grade was over. I'm here 5th grade, we graduate, 6th grade. Hey, Ms. Gonzalez, how you doing? And then she's like, oh yeah, I heard these are your grades. What's going on in that science class? Like, she was like totally just keeping up. And I just felt like, whoa, like something's different about that.
Gave me the time of day, mostly. It was very, it was very engaged in stuff that I was doing. Even though I was in detention, I was still learning.
And she was the one teacher who really saw a lot in me to make me feel like I wasn't the kid that other teachers were saying.
And there was a point where I said, okay, I'm gonna fail my French class because I haven't been there, so I haven't done any homework. I'm just gonna drop out before I fail. And then she specifically came to me and said, no, I'm gonna work out a deal with you so that if you stay, you won't fail.
We didn't do good at school, she would chew you out, but she would always give you a chance to make it up. You know what I mean? She would never put you low standard and just leave you there. You know, and that's one thing I like about teachers. They won't leave you behind.
You know, and when I got accepted into colleges, the first thing I thought is like, I better go. And I better go and tell her I'm gonna be like, guess what? I got into Penn State, I got into a UC, I got into all these colleges.
Actually inspired me to pursue political science.
She's basically the one that taught me to just keep trying.
I can accomplish more than I probably think I can. I felt it, like she didn't have to do that, but it made the difference.
You see, I'm getting emotional, because like, she's great, you know? Give me a minute.
With that, have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Mock. Item 11, public comments for closed session. In closed session, we have 3 items. Number 1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 or 3 of subdivision D of Government Code Section 54956.9, OAH case number 202304064. Item 2, conference with real property negotiators, property parcel number APN number 417-020-07-0. Property owner Valencia Pacific Incorporated. The described property parcel is adjacent to Tompkins Elementary on Pinion Street in Tehachapi, California. Under negotiation, potential price and terms for purchase. And number 3, conference with labor negotiator, Government Code 54957.6, subdivision A, agency designated representative Stacy Larson Everson, superintendent, chief business officer Hojat Intazari, and Candace Bedoyan, DWK legal counsel. Employee organizations, Tehachapi Association of Teachers, and California Schools Employee Association and its chapter number 466. Are there any public comments? Seeing none, we are adjourning at 7:31 to close session. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, volunteer, go.
Where's your gavel?
I know you're superintendent.
It is 8:48, and we are reconvening to open session. And report of action taken in closed session. Items 2 and 3 in closed session, there will be no report. On item 1, in closed session by unanimous vote, the board approved a settlement agreement with student to resolve OAH case number 20230400624. The agreement provides for behavior support, compensatory services, assessment, and associated legal fees. And with that, we are on item 15, adjournment at 8:50.